Question number 1. What is the primary purpose of access attacks? A. Gather information for reconnaissance. B. Exploit vulnerabilities in authentication. C. Encrypt data for ransom. D. Redirect network traffic. The most accurate description of the primary purpose of access attacks is B. Exploit vulnerabilities in authentication. Here's why the other options are not as representative. Gather information for reconnaissance. While gathering information is often a preliminary step in many cyber attacks, including access attacks, it's not the primary goal of the attack itself. Access attacks focus on gaining unauthorized access to a system or network, not just collecting data. Encrypt data for ransom. Ransomware attacks primarily focus on encrypting data to extort money from victims, not necessarily gaining initial access. While gaining access might be a prerequisite, it's not the core objective. Redirect network traffic. Redirecting traffic can be a tactic used in some access attacks. Question number 2. What method is commonly used in password attacks for guessing passwords? A. Port redirection. B. Trust exploitation. C. Brute forcing. D. Credential stuffing. What method is commonly used in password attacks for guessing passwords? The correct answers is C. Brute forcing is the most common method used in password attacks for guessing passwords. Why other options not? A. Port redirection. This involves diverting network traffic to a different location, usually not relevant to password guessing. B. Trust exploitation. This leverages compromised system access to gain further privileges, not directly applicable to password guessing. D. Credential stuffing. This reuses leaked passwords from other breaches against multiple accounts, but doesn't involve guessing new passwords. In a brute force attack, attackers systematically try combinations of characters until they find the correct password. This can be extremely effective against weak passwords, for example, short dictionary words, predictable patterns. Here are some common variations of brute force attacks. Simple brute force. Tries all possible character combinations starting from the shortest length. Hybrid brute force combines dictionary words with common substitutions, for example, password 123, P at SSW 0RD. Rule-based brute force leverages knowledge of user information, for example, birthdays, pet names, to create targeted guesses. To protect yourself from brute force attacks, use strong, unique passwords, longer, 12+ characters, with a mix of uppercase, lowercase numbers and symbols. Enable two-factor authentication, 2FA, adds an extra layer of security by requiring a second verification step. Use a password manager, generates and stores strong passwords for different accounts. Implement lockout policies. Limit login attempts after a certain number of failures. Question number 3. How can you prevent password attacks? A. Use weak and guessable passwords. B. Implement strong password policies. C. Share passwords across multiple accounts. D. Avoid unique passwords for each account. The best way to prevent password attacks is B. Implement strong password policies. Why the other options are risky? A. Use weak and guessable passwords. This is like handing over the keys to your castle. Hackers can easily crack weak passwords using automated tools, so avoid using dictionary words, personal information, predictable patterns, or short lengths. C. Share passwords across multiple accounts. Reusing passwords is a big no-no. If one account gets compromised, all your other accounts using the same password are at risk as well. Treat each password as unique and never share it. D. Avoid unique passwords for each account. While it might seem convenient to use the same password everywhere, it's a security disaster waiting to happen. If a hacker cracks one password, they have access to all your accounts. Strong, unique passwords for each account are essential. Here are some key elements of strong password policies. Minimum length of 12 characters. The longer, the better. Mix of uppercase, lowercase numbers and symbols. Complexity is your friend. Regular password changes. Aim for every 6 months to minimize the window of vulnerability. Prohibit common words, personal information, and predictable patterns. Hackers often try these first. Educate users about password security. Knowledge is power. Additional tips for preventing password attacks. Enable two-factor authentication. 2FA adds an extra layer of security beyond just the password. Use a password manager. Helps you generate and store strong, unique passwords securely. Be cautious about phishing attempts. Never click on suspicious links or enter your credentials on untrusted websites. Keep your software and security tools updated. Patch vulnerabilities promptly. Question number 4. What is the purpose of port redirection in a cyber attack? A. Encrypt data for ransom. B. Bypass firewalls and infiltrate networks. C. Exploit vulnerabilities in authentication. D. Gather information for reconnaissance. The correct answer is B. Bypass firewalls and infiltrate networks. Here's why. A. Encrypt data for ransom. While port redirection can be used to establish communication channels for data exfiltration, the primary purpose of encryption in ransomware attacks is to render the stolen data unusable until a ransom is paid. C. Exploit vulnerabilities in authentication. Port redirection rarely plays a direct role in exploiting authentication vulnerabilities. Attackers typically use other techniques like phishing or credential stuffing to bypass authentication altogether. D. Gather information for reconnaissance. While attackers might use port redirection to probe specific ports for vulnerabilities, it's not the primary method for information gathering. Techniques like social engineering and network scanning are more common for reconnaissance. Therefore, the most relevant purpose of port redirection in cyber attacks is to manipulate network traffic flow, allowing attackers to bypass security measures like firewalls and gain unauthorized access to internal networks. Question number 5. How does a man-in-the-middle MITM attack work? A. Encrypts data for ransom. B. Positions itself between user and application. C. Exploits trust in digital interactions. D. Redirects network traffic. The correct answer is B. Positions itself between user and application. Here's why. A. Encrypts data for ransom. While MITM attacks can be used to intercept and potentially encrypt data, their primary goal is not encryption, but eavesdropping and manipulating communication. C. Exploits trust in digital interactions. This is a broader concept encompassing MITM attacks, but it doesn't describe the specific mechanics of how they work. D. Redirects network traffic. Redirecting traffic can be a tactic used in MITM attacks, but it's not the core principle. The key idea behind a MITM attack is that the attacker secretly inserts themselves into the communication channel between two parties, such as a user and a website. They then act as a proxy, relaying messages back and forth while potentially intercepting sensitive data. This could include login credentials, credit card information, or any other information exchanged during the communication. Modifying data. The attacker could alter messages to deceive one or both parties, manipulating their actions or stealing information, impersonating one of the parties. By mimicking the user or the application, the attacker can gain further trust and access additional information or resources. Question number 6. What is an effective measure to protect against MITM attacks? A. Using weak passwords. B. Regularly updating software. C. Ignoring security awareness training. D. Disabling encryption protocols. The most effective measure to protect against MITM attacks is B. Regularly updating software. Here's why the other options are not effective. Using weak passwords. Weak passwords are easily guessed or cracked, making them vulnerable to attacks used in MITM scenarios like phishing or credential stuffing. Ignoring security awareness training. This training equips users with knowledge and skills to identify and avoid potential threats, including MITM attacks. Ignoring it leaves you less prepared. Disabling encryption protocols. Encryption scrambles data, making it unreadable to attackers even if intercepted in a MITM attack. Disabling it removes this crucial layer of protection. While regularly updating software might seem like a broad recommendation, it's crucial because software updates often patch security vulnerabilities. These vulnerabilities are the very entry points attackers exploit in MITM attacks. Addressing them through updates significantly reduces the risk. Many updates include security enhancements. These enhancements can strengthen encryption protocols, improve authentication mechanisms, and implement other measures that make it harder for attackers to launch successful MITM attacks. Question number 7. Which type of reconnaissance attack involves discovering basic information about a target, such as IP addresses and network devices? A. Passive reconnaissance. B. Active reconnaissance. C. Physical reconnaissance. D. DNS spoofing. The correct answer is A. Passive reconnaissance. Here's why. Passive reconnaissance. This involves gathering information about a target without directly interacting with it. This includes collecting publicly available data like IP addresses, network devices, employee names, and website content. It aims to build a basic understanding of the target's infrastructure and potential vulnerabilities. Active reconnaissance. This involves directly interacting with the target system to gather information. This can involve techniques like port scanning, vulnerability scanning, and password spraying. It aims to identify specific weaknesses and exploit them. Physical reconnaissance. This involves gathering information about the target through physical means, such as observing physical locations, dumpster diving, or eavesdropping on conversations. It's less common in the digital age but can still be relevant in certain situations. DNS spoofing. This is a specific attack technique that involves redirecting internet traffic to a malicious server by manipulating the domain name system, DNS. While it can be used to gather information, it's not primarily a reconnaissance method. Question number 8. What is a common method used in active reconnaissance for determining open ports and running services? A. Footprinting. B. Packet sniffing. C. Ping sweeps. D. Port scanning. The most common method used in active reconnaissance for determining open ports and running services is D. Port scanning. Here's why the other options are less suited for this purpose. Footprinting. While footprinting is part of active reconnaissance, it focuses on gathering broader information about the target network, including operating systems, devices, and network topology. It doesn't necessarily involve directly probing individual ports. Packet sniffing. This technique involves capturing network traffic flowing through a specific segment of the network. While it can reveal information about active connections and services, it requires access to that specific network segment and might not capture detailed information about specific ports. Ping sweeps. Ping sweeps involve sending ping requests to a range of IP addresses within a network to identify active hosts. While this can help identify potential targets, it doesn't provide information about open ports or running services on those hosts. Port scanning, on the other hand, specifically interacts with individual ports on a target system to determine if they are open and potentially identify the services running on them. This information is crucial for attackers to understand the target's vulnerabilities and plan their next steps. There are several different types of port scans, each with its own strengths and limitations. Some common methods include SYN scans. These scans send a single connection request and analyze the response to determine if the port is open or closed. TCP scans. These scans establish a full connection with the port and then quickly close it, gathering more information about the service running on that port. UDP scans. These scans send datagrams to UDP ports, which are connectionless, to determine if they are open or closed. Question number 9. How can phishing be defined in the context of cyber attacks? A. exploiting trust in digital interactions. B. Discovering vulnerabilities in authentication. C. Intercepting network traffic. D. Fraudulent technique to steal personal information. The most accurate definition of phishing in the context of cyber attacks is D. Fraudulent technique to steal personal information. Here's why the other options, while related to cyber attacks, don't perfectly capture the essence of phishing: exploiting trust in digital interactions. While a broader concept encompassing phishing, it doesn't directly specify the fraudulent nature or the goal of stealing information. Discovering vulnerabilities in authentication. While phishing can sometimes leverage such vulnerabilities, it's not solely focused on identifying weaknesses in authentication systems. Intercepting network traffic. While this might be a tactic used in some phishing schemes, for example, email interception, it's not the core mechanism of how phishing works. Phishing specifically deceives victims into divulging sensitive information or taking actions that compromise their security. This can involve emails, text messages, phone calls, or even social media messages that appear to be from legitimate sources like banks, credit card companies, or even friends and colleagues. By exploiting trust and urgency, attackers trick victims into clicking malicious links, opening attachments containing malware, or revealing personal details like passwords or credit card numbers. Therefore, option D accurately captures the fraudulent intent and information-stealing objective that defines phishing attacks. Question number 10. What security measure is recommended to protect against reconnaissance attacks? A. Ignoring security audits. B. Using predictable passwords. C. Implementing strong firewall rules. D. Allowing open access to ports. Please subscribe, like, and share for friends in other university. The most recommended security measure to protect against reconnaissance attacks is C. Implementing strong firewall rules. Here's why the other options are not recommended. Ignoring security audits. Security audits are essential for identifying vulnerabilities that attackers can exploit in reconnaissance attacks. Ignoring them leaves your systems exposed. Using predictable passwords. Predictable passwords are easily guessed or cracked, making them vulnerable to attacks used in reconnaissance scenarios like phishing or credential stuffing. Allowing open access to ports. Open ports are like open doors into your network, making it easy for attackers to scan for vulnerabilities and launch attacks. Strong firewall rules act as a barrier between your internal network and the outside world. They can be configured to block access to unauthorized ports. This prevents attackers from scanning for vulnerabilities or exploiting open ports. Filter incoming and outgoing traffic. You can define rules to only allow legitimate traffic based on factors like IP address, protocol, and application. Log suspicious activity. Monitoring firewall logs can help you identify potential reconnaissance attempts and take action. Question number 11. What is the primary goal of a packet sniffer in the context of reconnaissance? A. Encrypt data for ransom. B. Intercept and analyze data packets. C. Manipulate network traffic. D. Launch denial-of-service attacks. The primary goal of a packet sniffer in the context of reconnaissance is B. Intercept and analyze data packets. Here's why the other options are less relevant. Encrypt data for ransom. While attackers might use packet sniffers to capture sensitive data, their primary goal in reconnaissance is to gather information, not encrypt it for ransom. Manipulate network traffic. While some advanced packet sniffers can manipulate traffic, this is not the typical use case in reconnaissance. It's more often used for launching targeted attacks based on the intercepted information. Launch denial-of-service attacks. Packet sniffers are not typically used for denial-of-service attacks, which aim to overwhelm systems with traffic, not gather information. In reconnaissance, attackers use packet sniffers to eavesdrop on network traffic flowing through a specific segment. This allows them to capture data packets containing valuable information such as login credentials, usernames, passwords, and other authentication details. Personal information, names, addresses, email addresses, and other sensitive data. Financial information, credit card numbers, bank account details, and other financial data. Network configuration. Information about the network topology, devices, and operating systems. By analyzing this captured data, attackers can gain valuable insights into the target network, identify potential vulnerabilities, and plan their next steps in carrying out a cyber attack. Question number 12. How does social engineering contribute to passive reconnaissance? A. Gaining unauthorized access to networks. B. Discovering IP addresses. C. Manipulating people for information. D. Exploiting trust in digital interactions. The most accurate answer to how social engineering contributes to passive reconnaissance is C. Manipulating people for information. Here's why the other options, while related, are not as precise. Gaining unauthorized access to networks. While social engineering can be used to gain access to networks, for example phishing for login credentials, that's typically more associated with active reconnaissance where interaction occurs. Passive methods focus on gathering information without direct interaction. Discovering IP addresses. While manipulating people might sometimes reveal IP addresses, for example, asking an employee for internal network details, discovering them isn't the primary focus of social engineering in passive reconnaissance. Exploiting trust in digital interactions. This broader concept describes how social engineering works, but it doesn't pinpoint the specific aspect relevant to passive reconnaissance, which is information gathering through manipulation. Social engineering, in the context of passive reconnaissance, leverages human interaction to extract valuable information without directly probing the target system. This can involve various tactics such as pretexting, posing as a legitimate entity, for example IT support HR, to trick people into revealing sensitive information. Baiting, offering enticing rewards or creating urgent situations to encourage people to click on malicious links or download attachments containing information-gathering tools. Tailgating, physically following authorized personnel into restricted areas to gain access or observe sensitive information. Dumpster diving, extracting information from discarded documents or physical media to glean details about the target's network, users, or operations. By manipulating people's trust, curiosity, or fear, attackers can gather crucial information that aids in passive reconnaissance. This information can then be used to plan further attacks, identify vulnerabilities, or gain access to critical systems. Question number 13. What role does DNS spoofing play in reconnaissance attacks? A. Capturing and analyzing data packets. B. Corrupting the domain name system. C. Intercepting email communications. D. Creating fake websites. The role DNS spoofing plays in reconnaissance attacks is B. Corrupting the domain name system. Why the other options are not as relevant to DNS spoofing and reconnaissance. Capturing and analyzing data packets. While attackers can use tools alongside DNS spoofing to capture and analyze data packets, it's not the primary function of DNS spoofing itself. Intercepting email communications. Email interception falls more under the realm of techniques like man-in-the-middle attacks, not directly related to DNS spoofing. Creating fake websites. While creating fake websites can be a consequence of DNS spoofing to redirect users there, it's not the core objective of the reconnaissance stage. DNS spoofing, in the context of reconnaissance attacks, aims to manipulate the domain name system, DNS, by injecting false information. This misinformation directs users to malicious websites instead of the legitimate ones they intended to visit. Through this redirection, attackers can achieve various goals relevant to reconnaissance, such as stealing sensitive information. By mimicking legitimate websites, for example banks, social media platforms, attackers can trick users into entering login credentials or other personal data on the fake site. Planting malware. The spoofed website might contain malicious code that infects user devices with malware, allowing attackers to steal data, gain access to systems, or launch further attacks. Observing user behavior. By analyzing how users interact with the spoofed website, attackers can gather valuable insights into their habits, preferences, and security vulnerabilities. Question number 14. How can organizations protect against phishing attacks? A. Encourage the use of weak passwords. B. Avoid implementing email encryption. C. Conduct regular security audits. D. Educate users to recognize and report suspicious activities. The most effective way for organizations to protect against phishing attacks is D. Educate users to recognize and report suspicious activities. While all the options have a role to play, user education is the cornerstone of any effective defense against phishing. Here's why. Phishing attacks are constantly evolving. Hackers develop new tactics and techniques all the time, making it impossible to rely solely on technical solutions. Users are the first line of defense. They are the ones who open emails, click on links, and enter information. Empowering them to recognize and report suspicious activities is crucial. Here are some specific ways organizations can educate users to protect against phishing. Phishing simulations and training. Regularly conduct simulations where employees receive mock phishing emails or encounter realistic phishing scenarios. This helps them learn to identify red flags and make informed decisions. Security awareness training. Provide ongoing training on common phishing tactics, social engineering techniques, and best practices for secure online behavior. Clear reporting procedures. Establish clear and easy-to-follow procedures for employees to report suspicious emails, websites, or activities. This allows for prompt investigation and mitigation of potential threats. Reinforcement and updates. Regularly reinforce key security messages and keep training materials updated with the latest phishing trends and techniques. Remember, security is a shared responsibility. By empowering users to be vigilant and report suspicious activity, organizations can significantly reduce the risk of falling victim to phishing attacks. Here are some additional tips that organizations can implement. Implement email filtering and anti-phishing solutions. These tools can help block some phishing emails from reaching users' inboxes. Use strong email authentication protocols. Protocols like DMARC and SPF can help prevent attackers from spoofing legitimate email addresses. Keep software and systems up to date. This helps patch vulnerabilities that attackers can exploit in phishing attacks. Restrict access to sensitive information. Limit the number of people who have access to sensitive data and implement strong access controls. By combining user education with technical safeguards, organizations can create a robust defense against phishing attacks and protect their valuable data and resources. Question number 15. Why is encryption recommended for protecting against reconnaissance attacks? A. To slow down network traffic. B. To create fake websites. C. To secure sensitive data during transmission. D. To exploit trust in digital interactions. The reason why encryption is recommended for protecting against reconnaissance attacks is C. To secure sensitive data during transmission. Here's why the other options are not directly related to encryption's role in reconnaissance protection. Slow down network traffic. While encryption might have a slight overhead on processing power, its primary purpose is not to hinder network speed. In fact, some encryption algorithms are specifically designed for efficiency. Create fake websites. Encryption is not involved in website creation and doesn't play a role in reconnaissance attacks focused on gathering information, not manipulating website appearances. Exploit trust in digital interactions. While encryption does contribute to building trust in online interactions by ensuring data privacy, this is more of a broader benefit, not the specific reason for its use against reconnaissance. Encryption, in the context of reconnaissance attacks, works by transforming readable data into an unreadable format using a secret key. This makes it impossible for attackers who intercept the data to understand its meaning, even if they manage to capture it through techniques like packet sniffing or man-in-the-middle attacks. By encrypting sensitive information during transmission, organizations can significantly reduce the effectiveness of reconnaissance efforts. Attackers might still be able to gather some basic information about the data, for example, its size, origin, destination, but the actual content remains protected. This helps safeguard sensitive data like login credentials, usernames, passwords, and other authentication details that could be used to gain unauthorized access. Personal information, names, addresses, social security numbers, and other data that could be used for identity theft or fraud. Financial information, credit card numbers, bank account details, and other financial data that could be used for financial crimes. Business secrets, trade secrets, competitive intelligence, and other confidential information that could give attackers an edge. Therefore, by encrypting sensitive data in transit, organizations can significantly reduce the risk of information exposure during reconnaissance attacks and protect their critical assets. Please subscribe, like, and share for friends in other university.